back. From there, I had the opportunity to be a code enforcement for 7 years. And as a code enforcement officer, I can tell you that is not an easy job. But I also can tell you that is something that I understand the community's needs. But I also feel that by being a code enforcement officer, it gave me, if I didn't already have it, it gave me empathy and understanding how to work with people. You don't just go tell people, move your trash right now. You have to be able to deal with them. You have to understand the situation, but at the same time, you have to get that done. From there, I had the opportunity to be the community planner, and from there, I really got a chance to develop my skill set as far as working with metrics and also grant writing, working with the local sub-recipients and also the CHODOs. From there, I had the opportunity to be a director of community and neighborhood services, where I was able to come into a community where they were like they were on HUD's worst list for performance. When I walked in the door, my first day, I was hit by a finding letter that was like 10 pages long. And in addition to that, I was hired in November, and in April, they had to have their consolidated plan completed. And if they did, they were in jeopardy of losing roughly about $3 million. I was able to get those things done. I was able to get all the findings done within 1 year, and I was also able to, in a very short period of time, make that community go from one of the worst performers, one of HUD's worst performers, to one of HUD's best performers, not only in timeliness, but also in spending of expenditures. From there, I left the municipal side for a minute and worked on the nonprofit side. I worked for the Center for Community Progress, and in there, they embedded me with the city of Detroit as a neighborhood stabilization program manager. And from there, the city of Detroit was significantly behind on spending their NSP funds. I was able to come in, set up some mechanisms in order to help track the funding for both MSHA and HUD. And also, I had an opportunity to work with with some of the neighborhood associations and stuff like that. I'm going out, finding houses that need to be rehabilitated, getting an inventory of properties that need to be demolished and those things. From there, I was hired as a consultant by the city of Detroit. So I was my own private consultant, and I worked as the demolition permit coordinator. So I'm just telling you what they told me. I had the opportunity to be the demolition permit coordinator for the largest demolition program since World War II. And in that situation, I was able to bring roughly about $25 million of revenue funds from permits to the city of Detroit. From there, I ended up becoming, in my current position, I'm an underwriter for the city of Detroit in their HRD department. And I basically underwrite properties. I have one of my projects is an old school. It's called Luther Burbank School, and I'm working with developers in order to develop into senior housing. Another one of my projects was the first Cadillac assembly plant, and one of the contractors or one of the developers is proposing to rehabilitate that into market rate housing. I have another project where I'm monitoring or I'm managing. The city of Detroit received a $900,000 grant from the Department of Interior, and they're matching it with another $900,000. And so we're rehabbing a recreation center, the park part of it, on the far east side. The name of the community building is called Highland Park. So I think that I've developed a very strong background in city government. I also think that compared to a lot of people, I haven't been pigeonholed into one different area, and I've also kind of moved around the state a little bit. And I'm also very passionate about small communities, and because I'm from a small community, I'm very passionate about small communities having the best quality of life that they can have.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll start the questions now. What is it about the city of Benton Harbor that makes you want to be our next city manager?
Well, I'm not going to lie to you. I am fully aware that it will be a challenge. That is not something that I'm not aware of. But I'm also someone who's not afraid to run from challenges. But also, I see so many positive things. I know you guys have been very active in replacing your water piping and lead piping and stuff, and I think you need to be applauded for that. I noticed you all have been working a lot on your streets and those type of things. And I did see where you have been doing some infill housing over the years and things like that. So I think that Benton Harbor, like a lot of other communities, you're just right at the right place right now. I think that, again, I'm from a community very similar. I know that for the last 30, 40 years, our communities have suffered. You know, they've suffered in several different ways. And I really believe that now it's time for our communities to kind of prosper. Not kind of prosper, but prosper. I believe it's time to, and again, I know it's not going to be easy because nothing that's positive is ever easy. But I really believe that it's you guys' time to really kind of prosper or whatever. And I believe that I might be the person who can help the commission, the mayor, and also the citizens reach those goals that you've been trying to reach for a number of years.
Next question, what do you see as the key issues facing our city?
Well, from what I'm reading, I would think one of the key issues is the situation with your water, right? Because what I've been reading is that for the most part, to stay solvent, you would need to increase your water, the customer's water prices by 20% per year. That's what I read. And, you know, I know that is a serious burden on the citizens. So I think that one of the main things is to come up with solutions in order how we can take some of that burden off of the citizens. And I think the main way would probably be is to bring in new employers that really need water and come up with some other creative ways of doing it. I know you guys have some social issues like a whole lot of other communities. And I just think that creativity can solve some of these problems. And you're always going to have some problems, but I think if you're aggressive and you have a good plan, I'm a true believer in the adage: if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And so I think that the water situation is one. I think that your need for new housing is another. And I think rehabilitation of some of your existing houses is another. And I think the social issues, because I've come to the conclusion, I guess you can tell them old, I've come to the conclusion that, how they talk about bricks and mortar, and bricks and mortar are very important to a community. But my thing is, so is brains and bones. So you've got to be able to, as you invest into the infrastructure, as you invest into the physical, you have to invest into the human.
All right now.
And that's my feeling, sir.
Can you briefly describe your employment history and qualifications and how those will prepare you to serve as the next city manager?
Sure. I think I already have, but I'll go through it really quick. I think that the experience that I got from working in the Neighborhood Resource Center, where I actually, like I said, I worked grassroots with neighbors, with community organizations, and with nonprofits. Therefrom, I understand the importance of code enforcement because I did it for 7 years. I had to write specs. I had to go out and inspect homes. I had to go to court, all those different things. I understand planning because I was a community planner for 3 or 4 years. And so I have a very good hold on writing grants. I know I have a very good hold on budgets. And also, everywhere I've been somewhat creative and came up with some new things and different things in order to try to make the quality of life better for individuals. I have been a director of community and neighborhood services where, I was responsible for the management of all the entitlements, all the different federal money that came to the community. And I went out and also solicited corporate money and also foundation money in order to help the community in so many different ways. Again, I understand because of my current position, I understand, and I'm not saying I'm an expert in it, but I do understand low-income housing tax credits, historical housing tax credits, and those type of things in order to work with developers in order to try to revitalize the community.
Number 4, please describe your management style and your approach working with city staff and members of the city commission.
Okay, I consider my management style to be very, very simple. I try to explain to everyone what the goals and objectives are. I try to make sure that they buy into the goals and objectives, and I want to make sure that they understand what is expected of them. Once that is done, I feel that people are adults, and I would hope that people would, from there, as long as they have a good understanding, as long as they're dedicated to the job and whatever else, I don't think there is any problems. If there are problems, then I'd like to bring the person in, try to understand what the issues is, because I feel like I have failed because evidently they didn't get a good understanding. And so I really feel that I like to be hands-off, but I can't be hands-off until I understand that you understand your responsibility and you're willing to do whatever's needed to be complete that responsibility.
Yeah, this one's, please describe your experience in the following areas: personnel and labor relations, public safety, public works, economic development, grants, and intergovernmental relations.
Well, all those things I think have been involved in. I can talk about the grants because I have written a significant number of grants. I wrote a healthy home grant for one community where it brought in $2.5 million in order to try to rid lead from homes. And we also were able to, I believe we abated, I believe it was 205 homes or 205 units that got abated. And then we also were able to train roughly about 200 families in how to deal with lead, and then from there, when I wrote the grant, I tried to make it in capsule. So one of the stipulations with the grant is that the contractors who won the awards, they had to hire at least 2 low-income residents and train them, and then put them on their payroll and stuff. And so that was very successful. As far as economic development, I was able to write an NSP 2 grant where it brought money into the community. One of the programs that I developed was a program called Operation R&R, and R&R stood for Resurrect and Recreate. And basically, it was a neighborhood program where I worked with business owners, residents, students, and whatever. And we talked about what the community needs and what the problems were with the community and those type of things. And from there, we're able to write grants and make proposals on things that the residents need. The lead grant was one example. Another example I can kind of use, which I consider to be economic development, is that one of the programs that I've always been able to implement in several different communities is that a program that I called Academic Olympics. In one community, I called it, the name of the community, Unity Academic Olympics. And basically what it is that children between the ages of 5 to the 8th grade, we had competitions with them where they competed in academic competitions. Everything from math, reading, finding things on the globe, like finding Vietnam on the globe or something like that, to we had it. For the younger kids, the 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, I'm sorry, I think it were 4 and 5-year-olds, but we had activities for them like something as simple as a race trying to tie their shoe. And we also tried to bring in not just academic activities, but also more workforce type activities. For example, we had an activity where the students put plumbing plumbing traps together. Another where they took screws and they screw and they raced on trying to put the screws into the slots or what have you in order to try to see, what kind of mechanical skills they have. The reason why I feel those are the reason why I feel those are economic development projects is whatever, is because I feel like, especially in minority communities, I think it's very important for potential businesses or residents or whatever to see their students doing positive things academically. I mean, I think that will bring in, hopefully that will show that the community is in a positive way. You talked about labor relations. My only experience in labor relations is I did have a staff of 10 where they were all in three different unions, and I never had a what is it called? I never had a grievance. So I can say that for labor relations. As far as public safety, I've always tried to work hand in hand with both the fire and the police department, because I think that is very important, especially for public safety. I think it's very important for the community to see public safety doing something other than arresting people. So like for the academic Olympics, I always try to get some officers to participate as judges. Any other activity I've ever had, we always try to see if we could have some kind of representation with fire and also public safety. So those are the main areas I can talk about, sir.
How do you prioritize and delegate tasks to ensure efficiency and effectiveness in the city operations?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is kind of like put everything down, see where it is, and kind of determine what needs to be done first, what is going to take a whole lot of time and a whole lot of energy, and what isn't. And those things, I think, are the things you need to knock out first. The things that take more time, more energy, and more responsibility are the things that I think you have to allocate more time to and be able to complete it in a speedy time period. I'm pretty old fashioned, so the one thing I do is write things down, and when I knock them out, cross them out, and go to the next.
Thank you. What is your experience in the area of budget and finance? How have you been involved directly in the mechanics of budgeting, budget presentations at meetings, and monitoring the budget?
Okay. I also think I have a very strong background in that also, sir. Again, working in CDBG, home, and all those things, I always had to create the budget in order to be able to, submit to the city manager, who would then submit it to the council, and then I'd have to be there to present the budget, and then from there manage it through the year. I also had to manage the budget of the different sub-recipients or SHODOs who receive those fundings. From there, as a director, I had to not only manage the budget of the entitlements and what have you, but I also had to manage the budget of my immediate department, along with any other additional funding that I may have brought in through foundations or what have you. I think I mentioned earlier, when I came in through the Center for Community Progress with the City of Detroit for the NSP program, basically I had to set up a mechanism in order to be able to track their spending and also their activities, because that wasn't there. And again, they were significantly behind. Once we established the tracking mechanism and some other things, things ran smoothly, and we were able to revitalize the community. And I think from the seeds that we planted, say between 2011 to 2015, you see the harvest that produced now. And it's like everything else, again, I'm someone who has adages. Again, it's kind of like a situation where nobody wants to get in the water until you tell them it's safe. And once you tell them it's safe, then everybody wants to get into the water. So, but it always has to be someone who's willing to take that first step.
If appointed, the city manager for the city of Benton Harbor, what is your plans for your first 180 days?
Well, first of all, I think I need to get a good hold on the budget and to understand the budget, where we are, what our needs are, and those type of things. So I would need to talk with the commissioners. I would need to talk to the mayor. I need to basically get a good relationship from the beginning with the city staff, and I need to talk to the citizens. I think I need to talk to the citizens in order to be able to understand their feelings and where they are. And I think by me supposedly trying to develop a good relationship with the citizens, I could be of assistance to you by kind of like, being the conduit between the citizens and yourselves.
What do you think will be the most important part of your job?
Well, I think the most important part of my job would probably be to make sure I can keep a good relationship with the citizens and with the commission and with the board. The second most important thing I think is that I'm able to accomplish the things that you all, the citizens, and the commission and the mayor would like to do. And also, I think one of the most important things that I need to do is make sure that I keep my, how do I want to put this? My integrity. My integrity is very important to me. So I think one of the things I really need to do, make sure, is that I keep my integrity. Because I know as long as I keep my integrity, I'm gonna get the job done. If y'all tell me I got to go, I got to go. But I know I'll be going with my integrity.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin, and thank you for the interview, and we'll be contacted.
Well, thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Come back and talk to the citizens.
Sure won't, sir. Thank you.
Out of 9, no, Mr. Nard said there were 9. Didn't get a replacement? Wow.
It just dropped out today.
You, God. Really? Wow. Was a fear. Was a woman or a man? Really? Man.
She was happy.
Yeah.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Little.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone.
Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am Alex Little. I have been in public service over 50 years. I've worked at a number of cities, worked in county government, and I've worked for state government. And before getting into government period, I had a private sector career where I worked for Ralston Purina, Kroger Baked Foods Division. I worked for Vulcan Materials Company as an assistant plant manager. And that was the last public sector job that I had before going in, private sector job I had before going into public sector.
Okay. Guess we can start with questions. What is it about the city of Ben Harbor that makes you want to be our next city manager?
Well, it's a city that I know intimately and very well. I have been the city manager here twice before. I have a lot of the history, background, and a lot of the things that development that took place in past years, I basically initiated and put together. I like the people, I like the physical location, and decided some years ago to make this home. I bought a home here in 1984, and since that time, I've worked over the lower half of the United States, but I've always come back to home. I came back here to retire when I retired in 2015 from Broward County.
What do you see key issues facing the city?
Many of them, primarily, boils down to a lot of them being financial, but that comes as a result of us being low in population. Our tax base is low. We have not operated as a business as we need to do in order to maintain ourselves. The various activities and services that the city provides should be treated as separate cost centers. Now, there's nothing wrong with the administration deciding or the commission deciding if it wants to fund something and pay for it, but if it doesn't do that, the different functions that are performed, you should be able to recoup at least the cost of those services so that you're able to maintain a financial balance and the health of the city.
Please describe your management style and your approach working with city staff and members of the city commission.
Our management style with employees is a participatory style that encourages and does the best that it can to try to teach people to understand what our overall common goals are and to encourage them to contribute, participate, to think of ways themselves in which they can help to make their employer, the city of Benton Harbor, better. In terms of working with commissioners, I've always understood that elected officials are policymakers. They basically set the policy in terms of the direction that the city is going to go. A good manager is a source of information for them on any particular issue that they have a concern with. It's the manager's role to gather and get to them the information they need, whether they use it or accept it or not. to do it and do it timely. And beyond that, once the majority of the commission speaks, to carry out their objectives and manage it as effectively, cost effectively, and in every other way as possible, and then timely to get it done.
What is your experience in the area of budget and finance? How have you been involved directly in the mechanics of budgeting, budget presentations at meetings, and monitoring the budget?
Long history in budget and finance, part of my education in college, both at Southern Illinois University and at Bethel College in Mishawaka, included budgeting and finance. I have actually been a comptroller of one large organization in California at one time. And throughout my involvement and career with the city of Ben Harbor and for that matter, state of Illinois and the counties that I worked for, I've always been involved with budgeting. Budgeting is a necessity for proper management to, once you decide on, focus on an objective or it's decided for you, the next thing to do is to figure out what it's going to cost financially to achieve it, break it down into the components that need to be done, and make sure it's realistic, and then to follow through with making certain that your activities and spending are in line with the budget. If
Please describe your experience in the following areas: personnel, labor relations, public safety, public works, economic development, grants, and intergovernmental relations.
if you would, one more time.
Describe your experience in the following areas: personnel and labor relations, public safety, public works, economic development, grants, and intergovernmental relations.
Well, in all of these areas, I have been involved from the very beginning of my career. My first exposure in personnel and labor relations began with Kroger Baked Foods Division in St. Louis, which the bakery serviced 6 states. And I had responsibility for in payroll at one point and some of the supportive HR functions, and then went into and was trained in purchasing. From there, when I went into public service with the city of East St. Louis back in 1969-70, it was the second largest city in the state of Illinois, second only to Chicago. We had 500 employees and probably the largest budget outside of Chicago in the state. We had personnel that we, I believe, about 120 police officers, about 80-something firefighters. We had people and the next largest area was public works. We actually constructed our own streets, did our own utilities, sidewalks, parks, and that kind of thing. We had the equipment to do it, we had the manpower to do it, and our people had the training and experience to do it. At that time, we actually had people come from Peoria, Joliet, Rockford, these places to East St. Louis to learn and train how to do this stuff. As the first, I was their management and budget director, and then their city administrator. And in both of those roles, I had responsibility for overseeing the personnel and finance functions. And originally, East St. Louis's government was a commission form where the old type, where each commissioner headed his own department. They came together and agreed to hire an administrator to run all of their departments and turn that over to a manager. So I oversaw all of those activities. With the state of Illinois, after I left East St. Louis, I was Governor Jim Thompson's State Economic Opportunity Officer. I oversaw $500 million in federal pass-through funds from CSA, Department of Energy, Health and Human Services, all of them. We funded the Chicago Department of Health and Human Services. They got about half of the money, and the remainder of 102 counties throughout the state of Illinois. So I've worked with budgeting, personnel, public works, every facet of government, including economic development, since 1970 anyway. I've had projects of all type, like, here close at home, I acquired the Vincent Hotel back in the 80s. Went down to Chicago and met with Cardis Collins, who was the chairperson of the House Ways and Means Committee, and got them to, she had their committee approve GSA selling that to the city. I set up the initial DDA and tax increment finance operation here in Benton Harbor that funded the clearing of all the land down there where 200 Pawpaw is now, and in fact wrote the grant that EDA funded to build the incubator there. We purchased the hotel, and I used EDA money to clear out the shale, put a new roof on, do everything that needed to be done to get it up and running, and we had 3 floors of it operating and making money for the city. The marina down on the river, I started that and then got a developer out of South Haven to come in, and we constructed and built that. We demolished half of the old buildings that were in downtown that were falling down, including demolishing the name of the hotel that was where Dollar Ride is sitting, in order to put Dollar Ride there, Milner. There was about a 7 or 8 story Milner hotel sitting there with windows open and plastic curtains blowing out the window. Didn't have the money to demolish it, but by getting the feds and the state to put Dollar Ride there, gave us the money to tear the building down. So we've done a lot of things in East St. Louis. The State Community College that's there was a project that I undertook with support from Governor Ogilvie in the state of Illinois. The state office building that's downtown across from where City Hall was, and the new City Hall itself, which was funded by EDA, was a project that I undertook when I was there. So as I said, I've been doing this for 50 years. And lastly, in terms of personnel and so forth, I was in charge of personnel and labor relations for the city of Green Bay, Wisconsin, for Ann Arbor, Michigan, Washtenaw County Road Commission in Ann Arbor, and in Broward County, I was responsible for over 1,100 employees in there, and 6 unions, because I have also I was trained in labor relations while I was in the private sector. So when I went to work for the city of East St. Louis, I managed, negotiated, and wrote their contracts, and I've been doing that ever since. I had in the city of Green Bay, 14 contracts that I negotiated and wrote the contracts. I handle mediation, arbitration, here in Michigan when I was with Ann Arbor, and I handled contract negotiations. They had, I believe, 6 contracts. I handled arbitration, including 312 for police and fire. So I guess I've been doing it a long time.
How do you prioritize and delegate tasks to ensure efficiency and effectiveness in the city operations?
Firstly, on the basis of priorities that are set by the commission. Secondly, priorities set by circumstances. Eagle gets a hold of us and says, we want a letter in here by the 31st of August. They get a letter by the 31st of August. If there is some other pressing issue, circumstances often dictate priorities. If sewer goes down and starts to cause a problem, people out of water, storm comes through and trees are laying all over, they get priority. So it's a continuous process. You outline a course that you want to be on and the normal priorities, and they get impacted by circumstances on a daily basis.
The city manager position requires you to respond to many requests in a short period of time. Explain your time management procedures and how you would ensure promptness, accuracy, and courtesy as it relates to requests from citizens, organizations, or staff.
Keeping in mind and on hand at all times exactly what resources I have to work with in terms of manpower in the respective areas, in terms of equipment, and in terms of money. And to then try to respond to and address items as promptly as we can and as efficiently as we can. Good example of that in this past couple of weeks, we've had tires sitting down there because when we put out the word before that we had a truck and we were gonna haul tires away, when the truck was loaded and left, people didn't stop bringing tires. But we wanted to get rid of them, but certainly did not want to set another truck down there and get the process started all over again. So we did get another truck, but we put it over where the basic work that it was being funded for, which was to clean up the ravine over there, and it was parked where they've got to go in and put sewers and so forth. So we parked it over there, and we had our people pick up the tires and take them and put them on the truck so we could get it out without starting that mess all over again.
I know you've been in the business quite some time, and the City of Benton Harbor, I know, gets a lot of federal funding, state funding. How would you describe your relationship with federal and state agencies?
I would describe it as great because, as we've said, I have a lot of experience not only with them, but also with grants and the projects. In fact, if I were to describe the job I've been doing as interim, it includes the city administration, working with the Brownfield Authority, and now that Act 381 has been amended, the housing, TIF housing financing is available. Eagle and the water situation we've had with the plant and the requirements that they've had on us. We've gotten a social district together. Cornerstones Alley is going to be opening up in another couple of weeks. The exercise pad I'm working on over here Yarborough Park. Since I've been here, Union Park and Broadway has been done. Chase Bank project, just got their site plan approved through the Planning Commission. Emerald Flats Plaza is about to get started in the next few weeks. I'm sure you saw in the papers this past week, the House of David Hotel has been purchased and it's being developed. We've got a high water grant that Carpenter Drummond's working on. Corner Wall Street project is getting ready to break ground. Project T. The old firehouse, the train station on Water Street was just purchased. Developers taking an option now on their paper company. We got a dozen street projects going all over town that I send out Evan Marsh's report each week. An option's been taken on their paper company to develop it. Ox Creek project, which you know is in excess of $8 million. You just approved Monday, $1,032,500 that we just got from National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration for cleaning up the valley. Hall Park is underway. I got $1 million grant that we're using on it. Bobo Brazil Community Center got $1 million grant on it. You'll recall that you initially hired me to straighten out the problems with CDBG. That has been completely resolved now. All of the grants have been used. We met the spending requirement for the very first time this May. We've got parking lot projects going on. I won't say a lot about it, but Modern Plastics is coming online to get dealt with. Housing redevelopment project. I just had the University of Michigan complete this preliminary housing study that we're going to be using to, at least I planned on using, if I have the opportunity to try and start rebuilding and putting houses back in this community to reestablish its tax base and its population base. You got your master plan implementation and rezoning coming up. And of course, the cemetery is an ongoing matter that has to be addressed and worked with. So never a dull moment.
What do you think will be the most important part of your job?
I think the most important part is going to be developing and bringing along the staff so that everybody not only understands, but is better trained to be able to handle their part of the process. Ultimately, my objective would be to get the city and its staff to where if I went off into the sunset, not a thing would be affected, that the city could keep going and progressing and moving forward. Of course, rebuilding the city's tax base and its population are going to be a very key part of that. Economic development, which automatically is a consideration. And for this city, given its present circumstances, getting water customers to where that deficit that you're experiencing annually with that water plant is going to be a major objective to resolve.
Thank you, Mr. Little, for your time.
Very welcome.
We'll be contacting. Thank you so much. All right, we want to thank everyone for coming tonight.
We don't have the citizen comments.
Citizen comments, anybody got a comment?
I know.
All right,
Tell us
Steph,
what happens next.
we'll be
Look,
to Ms. Wood.
some,
Well,
if I may, I was very impressed. I really was. I was impressed with what I've heard, and I'm hoping that you take into consideration, I'd like to hear from those other first two candidates, because, and I'm hoping that the other one can show up in person. There were only two that said something about it. The community predominantly Black. Nothing was said about training or anything. For the past 3 years, I personally have heard nothing but negativity about the people in the city of Benton Harbor. That's problematic.
Commissioner Kennard?
Yes,
Very.
you sent me a list of the ones that you were gonna interview.
Not to interview, to pick. Those are my picks, not to
Okay,
interview.
since you had one that didn't come, you only had 3 that you interviewed.
He gets called today. I didn't even know about till I got here.
Well, that's why I was saying, you got one person that was on that list that's here.
Thank you.
Should have had that opportunity.
Thank you. I didn't know until I got here, Commissioner, so she wasn't coming, so. Anybody else?
He sent me the list.
All right, thanks for coming tonight.
He sent it to
Good.
me
Go
yesterday.
ahead, Ms.
Okay, so
I think about
Yes, come
myself.
up.
so I didn't hear him say anything about dollar ride. Mr. Lilly, he got fired from the dollar ride.
No, he just talked about it. No, he didn't say nothing, okay?
That should have been.
And also, what happened when the first time when he was city manager? On no other questions behind that. That's all.
I'm just piggybacking off what he said. I think some questions should have been more in depth as far as the
Ma'am,
impact.
you have to come up to the microphone.
Oh, the YouTube won't be able to hear you.
I think some questions should have been asked more in depth as far as the past experiences or past jobs, why they left, the reason why they left, things of that nature. And also give them a chance to ask you questions about Benton Harbor, about the city and what you're looking for. So that's for future references.
I think this is just the preliminary.
Oh,
Commissioners
What
will
did you
have a
say?
chance to-
It's the preliminary.
The commissioners will have a chance to talk to them themselves and go into more in-depth questions.
oh,
Yes, that's what this is.
Right.
This is just
That's
a
up to the
narrative.
committee.
Yeah.
Right.
That's up to the committee.
right. Also, I think you should also ask the public. The public should have some input and some suggestions or whatever, as far as the city manager, as far as the questions or things of that nature. Always, I think you should always involve the public.
Yes.
I mean, always.
And I just like to say, everything I heard was from 1969, before I was born, and then 1970 and 1984. I think I was 14 then. So we need somebody that's current, that's doing something current. And everything that I heard from the last, what we gonna call him, interviewer, all the things that he mentioned was things that we as the city or businesses brought their stuff. It was nothing else that he brought as, where he's supposed to bring economic development. A lot of this stuff was in play with the old city manager and even years before that. Everything he mentioned that he helped and brought. And even as the interview, the longest job I seen was 4 years. And most of his job was 1.5 years. And it also said being a city manager, it's a 5-year experience. Well, as assistant city manager and acting internment, he don't even have 5 years experience combined in that field also. And from what I've seen, that's not stability. As far as being at the longest job, 4 years, and most of them was 1.5 years. And then it was all different states and cities, and from 50 years ago, even his degree was 1972. So, I think we need somebody who's most current and doing something right now. And then he stated that commissioners, when you asked about prioritizing, commissioner, he would do what commissioners say. Well, he had to listen to the commissioner and so forth. That's not even being done now. I have emails from months ago still not answered. And and then he said that prioritize as far as getting stuff done, it comes down to the money and all that. No, Commissioner, we are the boss. We are his employer. So things should be done what we asked to be done. And then even as when it says city manager responsibility, on that paper, it also says citizen. You should be answering the citizens and listening. I have get a lot of complaints that citizens can't even get answers, or when they do get some, it's incorrect. You know, you can't just make your own laws and ordinance. That's why we have charters. That's why you have 9 employers, you know, all that. So I see a lot of stuff. I'm gonna just stop there because I'm gonna have my opportunity. So I'm gonna leave it for someone else. But I'm gonna stop right there. But no. Not to mention his phone went off. And that's a no too.
necklace.
Oh, God. A new one too. Thank you.
Hi. Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for doing this process and allowing this open transparency so that people can be a part of it. Really got to see that happen. My only comments would be, I know that there's only so much that you can have done in a 15-minute time period, 15, 20 minutes or however long they were allocated. But in future like interviews, there were a lot of great comments mentioned. So I remember the second guy, he kind of mentioned like some of the creative approaches that he did to do certain things. And there were little things that were mentioned throughout, but just kind of, I would be curious to like, what were some of those things and how did they go about implementing those things? And so asking them to be specific about what their role was, like, yeah, you may have worked with code, but what did you do? Can you talk to us a little bit about your processes so that, you know, personality is great, but we want to make sure that you actually have the meat in what you are saying. And then adding to that, clearly this is not an easy community to kind of navigate. So maybe for your top picks, allowing space for them to actually come into the community, to meet with you guys, to do a city tour, to meet with some of the key staff before they meet in front of the commission so that they can be acclimated, because we want to make sure that people know what they're getting themselves into. Because so that 2 months down the line, they're not like, okay, this is too much. So just kind of like bringing them in and inviting them that more one-on-one interaction that you're not going to be able to get in this, quick period. So.
Thank you. Ms. Kennard.
I was quite impressed with the one person, one of the things that he said, when he included the community. He was speaking of interacting with the community. The community is our boss. They elected us to be a voice for them. So I think it's very important for the community to be a part, and that way we'll have a bigger turnout of people that come in, and because they feel that they're being heard. And when we have a city manager who manages the city, that should be one of the priorities that he have. Transparency is one of the major things too, that when we ask questions, we get them answered. Commissioners for years have asked questions and they never get an answer. And you hear one city manager after another said they respond to all of the mail. Now, as I told you, I had sent in and requested information from the financial area. When I heard from, not her directly, but from the city manager, and he tells me she's not available and he don't know when she will be. That's the slap in the face. Me as a commissioner, I'm disrespected as a commissioner. I know I'm new on the block, but I think I deserve just as much respect as any of the rest of them. But for him to answer her email that I sent to her and tell me she's not available and he don't know when she will be available. And I had been asking over a month trying to get a hold of her. So this is one of the things I think that was insubordination for him to even state it like that to me. Now I have that in my email. So if you think I'm lying, I can show you the request I got. And so I think that we should have city managers that are willing and will work with you, and then we get more cooperation, especially how the way you react. Your attitude determines your altitude. And when you're trying to get things done, we got to have respect for one another, but when you get a negative, a wall, after a while, people, that's the way they react because this is all they've been getting. And so sometimes you get a person on a bad day. I know sometimes I have maybe a bad day. And it's bad for a person to approach me on my bad day in the wrong way. So I know those days can happen. But when you got an important position as city manager, we got to look at his attitude. And you all know yourselves. A lot of you brush things under the rug and let it go. But some things is important for us to realize. I realized what we had going on here when I worked over there at Dollarite as a board member. And I was contacted and told me that I had to let this person go because this person had gotten himself $30,000 without coming to the board. Now, are we gonna put him in a position of handling money for our city? And he ignores the fact that the board has the authority to, if he wants a raise, to give him that raise. But he hadn't been there that long and wanted himself a $30,000 raise and say he wouldn't talk to us at the meeting unless he know what we were gonna talk to him about. So then that was insubordination. Because then the board had to wait to talk to him. And it was unanimous that they fired him from Dollaride. And I think you all know who I'm talking about.
No, I don't. Who?
Mr. Little. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't like going around the mulberry bush. Speak your mind, sis.
Good evening. What I would say is everybody had really great comments, things that we should consider before we hire somebody in such an important role. If there's somebody that backed out and you were allotting for a certain number of interviewees, then normally what happens is if there are 4 slots, then the next person in line gets an opportunity, is reached out to. So I would say it's important to consider that. The other thing is, this is one of the most important roles in our entire city. And so, even as a teacher, we submitted a portfolio. And so I guess my question is, do the applicants submit a portfolio? Do they just come and talk and have a resume, or do they have to actually show visually what they've accomplished and, what their role was within that accomplishment in like a book of the things that they've done so that we can match what they're saying they did with what they did along with those references. That makes a big difference too. What are folks saying about them in those spaces? So I would say that that's super important. I'm very concerned about interim manager Little's. It feels like his take is, and I could be wrong, but what I was hearing, it sounded like, how can we capture these funds from the city on these water bills? And the truth is, we know that was poison water. And so I'm listening for somebody who can look for other ways to capture those dollars rather than trying to get residents to pay for poison water. I think the money is there, but there are creative ways to reach out to the state and the federal government to offset those costs rather than putting that burden back on the residents who's already gone through too much. So just would like you to consider that. One last thing, I didn't hear any questions from this committee that asked about community relations, right? And so I think it's super important. I was really pleased to hear the other gentleman, Wilmer Griffin, mention that. It shows that there's a priority there, and of course, integrity is super important, so I was pleased to hear that. But maybe we can include a question in there about community relations and how they want to develop the inner city. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for having a more transparent process.
Thank you. All right, thank everybody for participating. Meeting is adjourned.
Now can I ask you guys a question?
No more questions.
Yeah. People- They don't want to hear what this guy is. It's already- I was,